Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a profoundly pivotal moment in history. We're looking at a single monumental act of defiance that literally sparked a legacy outlasting an entire empire. We're talking about the foundational stand of Imam Hussein. But, and this is absolutely crucial, we are zooming in on the immense aftermath of that stand. We're going to explore how the surviving women of his household, led by the incredibly formidable Bibi Zainab, carried his message directly into the heart of the enemy's capital in Damascus. This isn't just a story about a battlefield. It's an enduring narrative about what happens after the dust settles and how truth is ultimately preserved by those who survive. So the catalyst for this massive historical shift really boils down to a fundamental clash, which is captured perfectly in our source text. It says, the refusal of allegiance. Imam Hussein ibn Ali, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, refused to pledge allegiance to the Umayyad Caliph Yazid I, opposing his unjust rule. That single sentence, it's basically the blueprint for our entire understanding today. Because it wasn't just some political disagreement, right? It was an absolute, unyielding moral stance that would exact an unimaginably heavy cost on his family. Every single word here sets the stage for the tragedy and, of course, the incredibly powerful resilience that came right after.
Okay, let's dive into this. What is the true weight of a single refusal? We usually think of history in terms of grand, sweeping decisions made by leaders. But the cost wasn't just borne on the battlefield by those who fell. The true heavy weight actually fell on the survivors. Following Hussein's martyrdom, the women of his household were bound in chains. They were marched across the scorching desert all the way to Damascus as captives. It really goes to show that a profound act of defiance rarely ends with the martyr. The burden of the message totally passes to those left behind.
Section 1. The two central figures. To really understand the sheer bravery of this defiance and the captive women's subsequent sermons, we first need to look at the immense power imbalance between these two historical heavyweights.
And this brilliantly illustrates a stark duality. Based on our source material, on one side we have Imam Hussein. His authority is deeply spiritual and ancestral. He's identified explicitly as the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. That is unparalleled moral lineage right there. Pitted against him is Yazid I, the Umayyad Caliph. Now, the title of Caliph represents someone wielding vast established political and military might, so it's a direct collision between supreme moral authority and supreme institutional power. Knowing this massive imbalance really makes the impending refusal and the captive women's survival all the more extraordinary.
This massive collision leads us right to Section 2, refusing the allegiance, which is the exact point of friction that triggered the tragedy.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the absolute nature of the defining action. He strictly refused to pledge allegiance. The text doesn't outline any negotiation, there's no request for a compromise, no behind-the-scenes political maneuvering. In the architecture of an empire, a pledge of allegiance is the ultimate validation of a ruler's legitimacy. By completely withholding it, Hussein struck at the very core of the caliph's authority. It was a profound, nonviolent act of defiance, and unfortunately, it was a defiance that Yazid's regime ultimately answered with devastating, violent retaliation against Hussein's entire camp, which plunged the surviving women into immediate, terrifying peril.
But we have to step back for a second and ask, what drives a leader to refuse? Consider this rather surprising historical reality. The Umayyad Empire at this time was a sprawling, seemingly invincible superpower. Saying no to the Caliph was essentially signing your own death warrant and risking the complete enslavement and captivity of your entire family. A refusal of this incredible magnitude requires an unshakable, rock-solid foundational motivation.
Which brings us to our final section, opposing unjust rule. This is the core motivation and the enduring message that Hussein's sister, Bibi Zainab, would so boldly carry straight into the tyrant's court. So, the crucial point is right here. The absolute anchor of this stand was the opposition to unjust rule. Because the rule was fundamentally defined as unjust, refusal was presented as the only moral option. But the story absolutely does not end on that battlefield. The true power of this opposition was realized in its incredibly difficult aftermath. When Bibi Zainab and the surviving women were brought as captives all the way to the Umayyad court in Damascus, they didn't cower, not at all. Zainab delivered fiercely eloquent sermons. She basically weaponized the very tragedy her family had just endured to publicly expose the regime's injustice. She took the core motivation of Hussein's refusal and broadcast it to the entire empire, literally turning a crushing military defeat into an enduring moral victory.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. When does refusing allegiance become a moral imperative? Based on the history we've unpacked today, it becomes an imperative when authority demands your complicity in injustice. But even more remarkably,
This historical moment teaches us that true defiance just cannot be killed on a battlefield. Through the captive women of Hussein's household, led by the unshakable courage of Bibi Zainab's sermons in Damascus, a voice in chains proved far louder and far more enduring than a tyrant on a throne. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really look forward to uncovering our next topic with you soon. Keep asking questions.